This is Thais Carter, Director of Content for Advanced Star Dental Media, and we are here at the ADA's annual session in Las Vegas. This morning we are at the Pride Institute Technology Expo, and we are meeting with the technology panel that selected this year's Best of Class honorees. Now this is a really unique opportunity in that we don't get all of these gentlemen in an area such as this often. I think the last time we were together, or the majority of us was together, was for voting on this year's winners in the Chicago Midwinter meeting. And so I'm very excited about this conversation today. Thank all of you for agreeing to participate. And why don't we start by introducing ourselves?
Hi, my name is Larry Emmett. I'm a practicing dentist for well over 30 years, but for most of that time I've had a real passion for high-tech and digital dentistry, and so I'm just fascinated by this stuff and how it can help us move dentistry into the future.
I'm Parag Achalya. I'm the Director of New Technologies at the University of Pacific, and I spend part of my time in private practice, the other part in education.
I'm Marty Jablow from Woodbridge, New Jersey, a general dentist who loves technology, and I'm America's dental technology coach.
I'm Dr. Lou Schumann, the president of Pride Institute, and honored to have the panel here as the creator of the Pride Best of Class Technology Awards and the Pride Technology Expo.
I'm John Fluke. I'm in private practice in Lee Summit, Missouri. I also serve as technology editor to Dental Products Report, and I'm peer review chairman for the state of Missouri. And I am a diehard geek who loves to get my hands on the latest and greatest gear and see exactly what it can do as far as improving patient outcomes.
I'm Paul Feuerstein. I have a private practice in Massachusetts and try to take all the new technology products into my practice, try to use them all, see if they work. And if they do, I tell you they're good. If they don't, I don't tell you anything.
Hi, I'm Ty Schleier. I'm Associate Professor and Director of the Center for Dental Informatics. I'm one of the two egg-headed academicians on this panel.
You know, gentlemen, this is the third year that we're doing the Technology Expo, but it's really the first time that we've had the chance to share in this format why we needed a panel like this. And Lou, as the founder of this whole extravaganza, you know, what did you see as the primary need, and what were you hoping to provide as a solution?
Well, this really is a vision coming true as right before us. The goal was for the first time to bring together the leaders in technology in the world, really, the true experts, and for the first time bring them together to provide what I felt was the greatest value to the dental community, and by using all of their expertise in an unbiased, nonprofit concept, to be able to provide the dental community true guidance of what is really the top technologies, the top products today in the industry, and going through a process that wasn't a requirement of picking a number like top 10 or top 100, was no requirement, or even picking a product in a category. It was truly to focus on what technologies or products are making a difference, are really the best of class, that are truly above the fray itself. And there were some categories, for example, where there were a lot of good products, but what the panel was looking for was what technology in a category, if it exists, is setting the bar, really setting the goal of where everyone else should try to reach. And then also, in speaking with Larry, actually, I know a passion of his was one of mine too, which is the emerging technologies. Is coming up, the panel actually recognizing technologies that are going to make a difference in the industry. The companies might not be really that well known, but with this panel and all of their different levels of expertise, I felt that we really had an opportunity to make a difference, and both for the dental community to have someone to follow, and for the manufacturers to really seek this award and the prestige of this award as a result of the incredible people that are on this panel that I'm honored to work with.
Now, John, Marty, Paul, you all have lectured together before, but this is the first time that you've participated in something like this. So, John, if you just speak to why do this?
It's a great honor to be able to work with people that have different and varied backgrounds than from what you have. And even though Marty and Paul and I, Ringo left the group a few years ago, but even though each of us are good friends and we work together, we all do have our strengths and weaknesses in technology. And then when you take that and you throw in a couple of eggheads from the academic world who really see things, from a different aspect of training dentists and, how this can improve things in a young dentist's hands or from other areas and other demographics, and you bring Larry in with his years of expertise, and you bring Lou in, who has a whole different, areas that he works in, it just really improves the whole thing. And I'm a firm believer in the fact that you just can't put a bunch of smart people together in a room and not get a better result than you would get with those people individually. It becomes a logarithmic exponential thing of it just works better with more people. And I just love hanging out with smart people, because even though when we're doing the whole debate and hash and rehash and arguing sometimes, I always come out smarter.
Yeah, and just as a note, it's just to make a note, in going through the process, there was no question. There was lots of smoke rising to the ceiling. This process is definitely, with all the strength of these personalities in a room, the winners were truly based on significant debate. And it was one of the things that made it special for me, too, to have that ability of openness in the process.
Well, that's a great transition, because earlier, in choosing the best of class, you guys work with so many different manufacturers in a variety of ways, developing, testing new technology. What were you looking for in best of class? You pointed out not every technology category had a winner. Marty, what were you looking for in a best of class choice?
A best of class choice is some product, software, hardware that we could recommend to dentists across the country that they'd feel comfortable in putting into their own practices. Everyone here has a passion for technology. That's why we're geeks. But in that, we also know that everyone can't be on the bleeding edge. And what we're trying to do is take those technologies and make them more mainstream and have people be comfortable with adopting them into their practices.
One thing which I think has been said, but I want to kind of say it in a different way, my feeling for my passion for this is two things. One, I think it's important that we as the dental community, the users of this stuff, recognize great vendors, people that have done something really well that helps us. We want to recognize them. But the other half of it, which I think is just as important, maybe more so, is that we can tell dentists that want to move into the future but aren't sure what to do, say, this is a good choice for you. This is a good place for you to go. So there's two ends of it. One is saying thanks to the vendors, and the other one's saying, hey, dentist, come along. This is a great place for you to go.
Absolutely. Now, gentlemen, one of the questions that I really want us to be able to sink our teeth into this morning is, what do you see as some of the greatest barriers to entry for dentists when it comes to incorporating new technology? And I really want to make sure that we hear, from Parag and Titus, you guys in working with students, hopefully, they're graduating kind of passionate and excited, but then, not everybody necessarily goes on to create the practice of their dreams. What do you see as kind of the main barriers to entry?
So, Titus, that's a great question. I see a generation gap still between the new students that we're getting into school and the faculty who teach them. And the practitioners who are out there, they're somewhere in between. You have people like John whose office is teeming with technology, and you have other people who are very cautious. And one thing to realize is that we are in a very fluid period of high innovation. So there's a rapid change, and what people believe today might not be true tomorrow. And so I think that's an important thing for all dentists to realize. This is not a static picture. This is not Black's approach to cavity preparations.
Right.
So I feel like Ty brings up a great point. The current dental student thinks of dentistry as incredibly archaic. And they can't wrap their brains around why we're doing so many things the same way that we've done for so many years. They're in a world where, instant gratification with the iPhone, iPad, et cetera, whatever may be there. And then they look at the potential private practice they're going into. There's a huge divide on average. So it's almost that newer generation's ready, they're thriving, they want to go do it, and they have to help educate those who are already out there. And we have to start looking at technology from a standpoint of it doesn't have to be this cumbersome process. It might be an incremental step that you're taking to go down the road of becoming more technologically advanced. And not just doing it because you can say you have a new technology, but at the end of the day, patient care or your practice efficiency, one of those things must improve. Otherwise, it's really pointless.
Right. Now, Paul, for you, when you're out on the lecture circuit, what are you hearing? What are people kind of saying to you about their main challenges?
First, I'd like to add a couple of things about the academics. I do have a chance to go to Tufts University and speak to the students, and we're looking at students who are in their early 20s, and I'm sitting there showing them all this advanced 3D technology and homing things, and they look at me and they go, I can do that on my phone. They're not very impressed with all these things. I forgot the questions.
No, just when you're out, whether it's at Tufts or at a show like this, when you're lecturing, what do you see in terms of the main challenges that dentists face in incorporating? Maybe there's technology they're excited about. Why aren't they bringing it into their practice right away?
Well, there's a kind of an interesting problem. When we look across a room with the number of dentists, we see a range of ages from the early 20s to the late 80s, in fact, even 90s in some cases. And some of the older dentists say, I'd like to do all these things, but they say, I'm not going to be around for much longer, so I don't mean physically, I mean in terms of practicing, I'll just sell my practice. But guess what? If you're an older practitioner and you don't have all this infrastructure in your practice is devalued. So if someone says, well, why should I spend $50,000 to put in digital radiography now? The answer is a dental student, a dental assistant, dental hygienist now cannot, they don't understand what film is. So the practice is going to lose more than $50,000 in its value. So my message to them is, this is not just a bunch of toys to play with. This is very, very important in the infrastructure of practicing dentistry. Get all these products in there. Not all of the products, but many of the products.
Actually, Paul, that's a great point. As you know, running a practice management company, one of the areas that we do is transitions, and that has become a significant topic. And that now what we're doing is trying to retrofit, so to speak, practices where transitions are occurring with technology to make it more appealing to the students coming out of schools that want to go into practice, because if it's not there, they're not interested.
The other thing I want to add to that is there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in dentistry. And I think it's part of our responsibility to help the profession accumulate the indication that things are valid. This is not, dentists are not investing $20,000 in a new technology gadget without any reassurance that this is going to work.
I think that it comes down, when I see it's to fear. And it's not in physical fear, but fear of making bad decisions. And that the technology that they decide to embrace today will be obsolete tomorrow. Kind of like the computers that we all buy and the cell phones. We know next year there's a better model coming out. But the reality is that as long as that technology will provide what it needs to for your office, for your patients, that's all that matters. I still have the very first lasers that I purchased working in my office. So you don't have to be fearful of embracing technology and having things pass you by. Yes, things change, but as long as they're able to do for you what you need, it's working.
I would also add to that I think that's one of the big benefits of dealing with this panel, and kudos to my friend Lou for the idea, because we work with this stuff. Whether we're academics and we're working with it in an academic institution and teaching the students about it and then working with it in your private practices, or whether it's people like Marty, Paul, Larry, and I, we're in the trenches, and the things that I actually bring to the table when I bring to an audience or I bring it to an article, it's stuff I've touched, it's stuff I've got a track record with, it's stuff that I know works. And so I would encourage people to, take the opinions of this panel to heart, because we all are in the trenches. We all know what's going on, and we've got firsthand knowledge of this. And I think that's one of the great benefits of this is nobody has to walk out and go, well, I'd like to incorporate something new into my practice. Give me the dice, Hello 7, to make a Vegas reference since we're all here. And you're hoping you don't roll snake eyes. We can tell you do this, you use these products, you use the best-in-class winners. You've got good vendors with good products that provide good success. It's a win-win-win, and that's kind of the joy of working with this panel.
Well, here's the thing, though, and not to stir the pot, but I will take that upon myself. No one has mentioned price, and I think that's keeping the conversation very elevated. It's very professional, which I appreciate. But let's talk about a category like lasers, where I think all of you would agree that laser technology, laser dentistry, is very important. In the last couple of years, there was a vendor that came out with a very cheap laser, quality but cheap, and suddenly you're seeing more lasers and more operatories. Now, the laser that was selected as best of class is not that laser, but we've seen that laser move the dial in terms of how lasers are marketed, how dentists view whether or not they can bring it into their practice at a price point that makes sense. Are you guys hearing conversations about price?
We are. We're in business. We're doctors first. At the end of the day, what we're supposed to do and what we're charged with doing is providing the best possible care for our patients. So that's number one, because I like to tell people, if you don't make a profit and if you aren't a successful business, you're not around very long to provide that good care and help those people. But one of the big pieces for me on the Lightwalker laser, which was the best-in-class winner, was it's a hard tissue laser that is the most affordable one on the market. And that was one of the things that tripped my trigger as far as providing the vote, because suddenly now we've got a state-of-the-art device at a lower price point that people don't have to take as big a risk with. And, in my mind, there's no risk at all with the Lightwalker laser. I happen to be a user of that device, and I know that it works in my hands. But I do think price is important, and I do think it's important to monitor that. But I think, Titus, you would be probably one to say, too, there's other pieces other than price, because suddenly if something is more affordable, but it cuts my time in half, or, it lets me market a new technique to my patients, suddenly that's better, too.
Yeah, essentially, we have to look at return on investment, not price. Something can cost $100,000, but if the ROI is good, great.
I think the return on investment is huge. That's a big question that dentists are asking. And this goes back to your previous question, why is adoption slower than we would like it to be sometimes? And that's certainly it. I mean, you're looking at investing $10, $15, $20, $100,000 on these new products, and yeah, it's kind of tough. And I think there's the other side of that is you may be able to put on paper how I can show it's going to make money, but the fact is the dentist has to install it and create systems. And this goes back a little bit to the previous question about why do we resist it? And I think it's not just the dentists, it's the dental team members. And we really need to get those people involved as well, because I know I've talked to dentists that I've invested in what I thought was a great technology product. They come to me and say, Larry, I'm losing money. I can't make this work. And it's not because it's bad technology. It's because they didn't get good training. They didn't set up a good system. They're trying to do it the old way with the new technology. And so, again, the panel and what we're trying to do here is not just say this is something to buy, but saying this is how you make it work in your office. And I think we can't forget those team members. They're huge.
Well, and I would add along that line, Larry, as well, is when you get the systems in place and when you get, you're doing it the right way, then suddenly, word spreads. I've been pretty fortunate. I built a new office 3 years ago, and we built it state-of-the-art. And we have a backlog of people wanting to work in that practice because it's totally digital, because, there's no chemicals, there's no paper, there's no this, there's no that. But the other part of it is that I want people to know is that, you don't have to do it the way we all did and kind of muddle through it and discover the path on your own. You've got my friend Lou here with the Pride Institute, and, he put the panel together. And one of the things that Pride does, just in a phenomenal way, is to help be the coach, be the guide, through the rocky waters of all of this, to help everybody integrate this and to find a successful path.
Just one more thing on this return on investment, as Larry alluded to, it's not a hard dollar return on investment in many of these products. It can be a more efficient process in your office, and so there's not going to be a dollar return. If you can say a digital radiography system can cost $12,000 to $20,000, and if you start doing, you can say this much is the film, this much is the developer. That's not the way you look at that return on investment. You're looking at a better way to practice with this technology, practice more efficiency. It's not a hard dollar amount.
I think the return on investment point is key, and that practitioners need to start viewing it as not a procedure-based technology. The marketing aspect alone is a huge add-on, in that a patient transitions, they move places, suddenly if a patient goes somewhere else, and now that office no longer has the technology they're used to, it's a loss of a patient potential. You can be the best dentist in the world, but the patients only understand if something hurts. So as long as it doesn't hurt, they're okay, but they do understand your office environment. If we look at caries diagnostics, the world of explorers are so archaic, and we all continue to do it, but now an image on a screen tells volumes. And that's now, to me, a marketing component that technology is added for a patient base.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought up caries detection, because one of the things when Larry was mentioning systems, in talking to team members, it seems like there's a lot of great caries detection technology available, but it's creating the systems. Where does this fit in my appointment? What's a protocol for not just getting the data, but what I do with the data after the fact? And so in terms of, what we're looking at in technology, has the technology kind of exceeded our ability to create systems for this? Or how are we helping equip dentists to take something like caries detection and make it not just, oh wow, we offer this and it's really cool, but actually using the information they get to, better care for their patients?
Well, with caries detection and using an Explorer, you have to remember we're using the same instrument that's been over 100 years old. I mean, G.V. Black was telling us how we were going to detect caries by sticking it into a tooth. I would guarantee you he would not be saying the same things today. Caries has changed. It's evolving. It's totally changing. Cavity-prone years when I was a child was somewhere between 6 and 12. Cavity-prone years now in my practice are 16 to 25 based on diet and other factors. So caries is changing, and how we detect it, and the use of minimally invasive dentistry, and even caries reversal are things that have totally changed the way we need to look at the disease of caries.
One thing to bear in mind is that new technologies disrupt existing processes. And we have talked about workflow in between the lines and explicitly. And one of the very simple problems is if you take diagonal dent scores, how many vendors on the electronic dental record side have fields for those values? How do they track them? I've seen practices who write them down on papers because they can't put them in the computer. So one call I would have for dental industry is to think about integration more. And we have big supply houses like Shine and Patterson who actually have the market power to force integration, but you also have to ask your suppliers to do that. And I think that's a huge need in the industry.
I think with caries detection as well, one of the things is that dentistry is very procedure oriented, and one of the things that we need to get our minds around in a lot of regards is what I call the relative test is would I fill this on, or would I open this up on my daughter or my son or my wife? And the great thing about the way this has evolved is it's gone even from just numeric scores to the point now that we can visually monitor these things. And I think it works both ways now. If you're looking for surgical intervention and you're looking to not let things slip that you might have missed in the past, you can do that. But also with the monitoring ability of these devices, it allows you now to say, okay, let's do remineralization therapy on it, but now I've got a way to track, is it working? Have I reversed it, or have I frozen it, or is it getting worse? And so you can do that with good conscience and know that I've got a way now to gauge, is it working or not, as opposed to trying to apply some remineralization therapy and then it gets worse and you have no idea.
I think a real nice point about it is the patient becomes part of the process. A patient does not understand something sticking somewhere, and many times they may think us as clinicians are pushing harder to get to something. This is now an objective opinion that comes into your office. It's that second opinion within your office, and they become part of the process. So if we decide to watch something, it's an active watch. There's active management of the disease process that's occurring to shift in dentistry.
Well, another question related to technology and systems is something, let's talk about oral cancer screening. That we have so much amazing technology around oral cancer screening, the ability to capture these images, show patients kind of what's going on. But again, it seems like in a lot of practices there isn't a system for this. It's like, well, what am I doing with this? Am I afraid that if I find something but I don't report it the correct way, is that going to get me in trouble? How can we better equip dentists? And Lou, I'd love to know if Pride has any thought on this. How can we better equip dentists to take a great technology like oral cancer screen and actually make it part of a process that works?
Well, I think it gets to the bigger question. We can look at oral cancer screening, but it really comes down to getting the practice to engage. We were talking about team involvement as well. I think the key here is that the practitioner really needs to start to think about, what is the best for my patient, and how do we integrate all these different technologies in a way to not only benefit the practice, but at the end of the day, to benefit our patients. So you can look at multiple technologies that are really evolving, like oral cancer screening, that should literally be part of your everyday. It really becomes adoption, and starting to recognize the impact that can make on what we're here for, which is serving our community, serving our patient base. And so oral cancer screening and some of these other technologies it's about adoption, it's about getting the team involved, it's about getting them on board as well, and then all of a sudden, once it's integrated, as we mentioned, as a procedure, then it's part of that everyday process.
Right. Now, Marty, I know that oral cancer screening is something that you're really passionate about.
Yes, oral cancer screening is a very important part of every examination that you should be doing on every patient. The reason being is, one, you have liability, but that's not really it. We can talk about saving teeth, but as we all know, a loss of a tooth will not critically impact the rest of the patient's life. There will be issues, but it's not going to kill them. Missing oral cancer, that has a very good chance of having the patient not be here 5 years from now, because the problem I see is that people aren't looking, and that's dentists. Dentists have the responsibility, but yet, based on the studies, we are nowhere near that 100% of patients aware of the fact that their dentists are looking, And the dentists go, well, the odds of it being oral cancer are very small, and that's a good thing. But when they poo-poo the idea that it could be something, they're just doing themselves and, more importantly, their patients a disservice.
Marty, I think it's important for people to realize, and I don't think even a lot of dentists realize this, oral cancer is on the rise. Okay? About, 10 years or so ago, there were about 24,000 diagnosed cases. 2 years ago, there were 36,000 diagnosed cases. One person every hour dies of oral cancer. I mean, if this was in the mainstream media, and I'm not really sure why it's not, there would be a huge, emphasis on doing more screening, providing more. I mean, the numbers are there that show we need to do more. And the majority of cancers that are caught are not caught in stage 1 and stage 2, and your 5-year survival rate is 80 to 90%. They're caught stage 3, stage 4. And stage 3, stage 4, if you survive, you're talking about a terribly debilitating state to spend the rest of your life in.
We're also talking about the fact that the face of cancer is changing. When we were in dental school, we were really taught it was a 50-something-year-old male who was an alcoholic and smoked, and now what we're seeing is soccer moms, 30-somethings with no real reason to be getting cancer, and now we're finding that it's caused by HPV, human papillomavirus, and 70% of the population either has or has had HPV in their system. And that's something that we really need to be aware of, that now oral cancer is turning into a consequence of a sexually transmitted disease.
Well, I think, to transition, and I would love to have a separate panel discussion just on something like oral cancer screening, but to kind of keep the flow going, I'd love to talk a little bit about how different trends kind of in the broader culture are starting to impact technology created for dentistry. I know that one thing that we were seeing in our research at DPR is that more and more dentists are becoming interested in how they can engage with something like sleep medicine as more and more people are kind of reporting sleep apnea and things like that. And Lou, I know that you have an interesting perspective on this.
Yeah, I think that as we start to look look at dentistry moving forward, that sleep dental medicine is going to take a huge step into the field of dentistry and in practice. We do tend to have certain trends over the years, and I think that one of the biggest trends is going to be, in addition to the health history, which is do you snore. We're talking about millions and millions of undiagnosed patients, and nowhere better than the dental office for that to occur. One of the winners this year was the Somnoid Corporation that is involved in this. They're in over 20 countries around the world, and I think that you're going to see a huge trend in education. I think it really comes down to education awareness, where the dentist is going to start to understand that they can play a role, and they can play an important role, and technology is there, and it also is a very serious